If you can't assure people that they know who you are, you're not going to motivate them to go out and vote. And more importantly, you're going to make them feel uncomfortable about who's taking them into the future.
There are already indications that Republicans are looking at what happened here in Ohio as a blueprint for future campaigns. As one GOP leader told me today, we used to be the party that prayed for rain on Election Day, but we're not anymore. Dan?
Thanks. Cynthia Bowers in Columbus, Ohio. In U.S. Senate races, there was a stunner in South Dakota. Senate Democratic leader Tom Daschle was defeated by Republican John Thune. In Florida, Mel Martinez became the first Cuban-American elected to the Senate, defeating Democrat Betty Castor. Also in their sweep of Southern Senate races in Louisiana, even Republicans were surprised when the party's David Vitter was elected by an outright majority in a multi-candidate race. One bright spot for Democrats, Barack Obama, easily won in Illinois over Alan Keyes in a Senate race. All told, the Republicans increased their Senate majority from 1 seat up to 5. And in the House, Democrats had hoped to cut into the Republican majority. Instead, Republicans may have gained a couple of seats in the new House. Coming up next on the CBS Evening News, change is on the way, possibly in the Supreme Court, more certainly in the President's cabinet. We'll give you the inside story. Then later, world leaders react to President Bush's decisive win. We'll tell you what they said and some of the challenges they see.
Victory.
But first, another U.S. Army soldier was killed in Iraq today and a second wounded by a roadside bomb south of Baghdad. Also today, an American businessman was kidnapped from his home in the Iraqi capital. And a suicide car bomber attacked a checkpoint at the Baghdad airport, killing an Iraqi guard and wounding several Iraqi civilians. Iraq is just one issue President Bush will be dealing with in his second term, one of many decisive and divisive issues that could affect Americans long after Mr. Bush leaves office. CBS's Bill Plant gives you the inside story.
Chief Justice William Rehnquist, suffering from thyroid cancer, was absent when the Supreme Court opened Monday, and his empty chair was a mute reminder of fierce partisan battles to come in the president's second term. There have been no vacancies on the court in 10 years, and 4 of the 9 justices are over 70. That could mean 2 or 3 openings in the next 4 years, altering the shape of the court for the next 40, as it rules on hot-button issues such as abortion, gay marriage, and stem cell research. The new chair of the Senate Judiciary Committee says members of the current court lack the stature of great justices of the past.
I would like to see us select someone in the mold of Holmes, Brandeis, Cardozo, or Marshall. With all due respect to the U.S. Supreme Court, we don't have one.
Cabinet changes are also likely in a second term. Secretary of State Colin Powell, who was often at odds with the Defense Department over the Iraq War, has told friends he'll be leaving. UN Ambassador John Danforth has been mentioned as a possible replacement. Attorney General John Ashcroft is deeply controversial for his handling of civil liberties and immigration, and may be on the way out. Former New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani and White House counsel Alberto Gonzales are possible successors. But with a difficult war in progress, Secretary of Defense Rumsfeld is not expected to leave anytime soon. There will be 4 more Republicans in the Senate next year, and that may make things a little easier for the president. But at least some of his battles over nominees for court and cabinet are still likely to be bloody. Dan?
Bill Plant reporting live from the White House. Thank you, Bill. Election ballots in many states included propositions for voters to consider. Here are some of the results. Bans on same-sex marriage passed in all 11 states where they were proposed. A plan for proportional awarding of electoral college votes was defeated in Colorado. Florida and Nevada voters passed increases in their state's minimum wage. And Californians passed a plan for $3 billion in support for embryonic stem cell research. You're watching the CBS Evening News, and up next, those early exit polls, supposedly real information from real voters. So why were so many of them, including some of ours, wrong? In the first post-election trading day on Wall Street, the Dow gained more than 100 points, the Nasdaq 19. In future elections, political analysts may put a bit less stock in the inside track data from exit polls. That's because some of the early numbers that got into circulation yesterday turned out to be misleading. CBS's Richard Schlesinger has some data on that.
I'm taking national election polls.
Exit polls?
Exit polls.
Natalia Busey and about 1,500 exit pollsters like her spent yesterday gathering some of the most closely watched numbers in the political world.
In today's election for president, did you vote for John Kerry, George Bush, John Kerry?
Yesterday, a few of those early numbers leaked to some bloggers, and today there are a few red faces in cyberspace where some of the information was published.
It's not supposed to be leaked to the campaigns or to characterize who's ahead or who's behind during the day. That's not the purpose of the first wave of exit poll data.
The internet published numbers showing a close race, but one that Kerry was on the way to winning. According to one post, Kerry would win not just Ohio, but Florida as well.
We're waiting for hard data to confirm.
The networks, including this one, struggled with the early numbers, but resisted the temptation to call races based on exit polls. We did report the optimism in the Kerry camp early in the night. Of course, that optimism turned out to be misplaced, based largely on early exit polls that are notoriously unreliable.
The first wave of data has smaller sample sizes and is only interviewing people that voted that morning, so they're not necessarily going to accurately reflect the entire day's worth of interview.
How concerned are you about the availability and cost of health care?
Election experts have warned for years that poll numbers are given too much credibility by a nation eager for quick information. This year, it was internet bloggers who learned the hard way not to consider those numbers a snapshot of voter attitude when they're really just a small part of a much larger picture. Richard Schlesinger, CBS News, New York.
In a very real sense, the whole world was watching yesterday as Americans went to the polls. And as CBS's Richard Roth reports from London, the reaction to President Bush's re-election victory was mixed.
Some of America's critics called the second term a second chance for President Bush, but Russia's Vladimir Putin said it's simply cause for joy. Mr. Bush's re-election means Americans aren't intimidated by terrorism, he said. Italy's prime minister echoed the thought, and so did Israel's. Governments that have differed with the U.S. were gracious but cautious. Now what can we do together, asked the French foreign minister, to rebuild the relationship? Fix Iraq was the message to America, and fix the Palestinian problem. In a statement from his hospital bed, Yasser Arafat urged the administration to get more engaged. Foreign reaction, like American politics, is divided between a hope there will be less anger among allies and a fear divisions now could get worse.
In his first 4 years, George Bush was deeply divisive and polarizing in world opinion. If he does that again in the next 4 years, it will be even more difficult to defeat terrorism with an international coalition.
Britain's prime minister faced a different dilemma. Confirmation of Bush's victory hadn't arrived when Tony Blair, with a teasing sense of timing, addressed Parliament.
Would join with me in sending our warmest congratulations to President Karzai of Afghanistan. Like everyone else, I wait the outcome of the other presidential election with interest.
With interest and relief. In fact, he'd already phoned congratulations to the White House. Richard Roth, CBS News, London.
And that's part of our world. Later on 60 Minutes Wednesday, how President Bush pulled off his re-election victory, plus a U.S. soldier attacked by an enemy he never expected, and two guys called Click and Clack. 60 Minutes Wednesday, tonight at 8, 7 Central. We invite you to join us then and again tomorrow for the CBS Evening News. Dan Rather reporting. See you soon on 60 Minutes Wednesday.
For news 24 hours a day, click on cbsnews.com. Brought to you in part by Walmart. Getting a sneak peek of your baby at the mall. Is it safe? Tomorrow. Experience CBS News.